On Sunday the 13th of July in 2025, a 29-year-old former NFL player named Sam Beal borrowed his girlfriend's car in Michigan after telling her he was heading to work. However, little did she know at the time that he would instead decide to drive more than 800 miles to the Virginia Beach oceanfront without telling anyone why. Later that night, Sam called and said he was on his way home, but this would be the last time that anyone would hear from him, as he would never return. Days later, his car was discovered parked near the beach, and inside were his shoes, socks, as well as a parking ticket and a store receipt, but Sam was nowhere to be found. However, despite the police claiming that there were no signs of foul play, more than 7 months later, Sam Beal is still missing, leaving his family understandably devastated, as they are only left to wonder what really happened after that final phone call, and how could a former NFL player just disappear without a trace. Samuel Beal was born and raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he grew up surrounded by family and a community that watched him develop into a disciplined and driven young man. From an early age, Sam stood out, not just for his athletic ability, but for his demeanour. Those close to him have described Sam as quiet, reserved, and thoughtful, someone who didn't seek attention but earned respect through consistency and focus. He wasn't reckless, impulsive, or known for living an unpredictable lifestyle. Sam attended local schools in the Grand Rapids area, where football quickly became a defining part of his life. His talent on the field was undeniable, but it was his work ethic that separated him. Coaches and teammates saw him as someone who took preparation seriously, someone who thrived in structured environments and understood discipline. That dedication earned him a spot at Western Michigan University, where Sam played college football and continued to build his reputation as a dependable and physically elite cornerback. His performance at Western Michigan eventually put him on the radar of NFL scouts, a rare achievement that reflected years of commitment and sacrifice. So it was no surprise that in 2018, Sam's lifelong goal became reality when he was selected by the New York Giants in the NFL supplemental draft. He went on to play professional football, appearing in games for the Giants and officially reaching a new level that only a small fraction of athletes ever achieve. But like many professionals, Sam's career came with challenges. After several seasons, roster changes, and the uncertainty that often follows life after professional sports, Sam found himself navigating a major transition, stepping away from the rigid structure that had defined most of his adult life. Despite these changes, however, Sam remained close to his family. His sister Essence has spoken publicly about their bond and how deeply connected Sam was to the people in his life. According to those closest to him, Sam stayed in contact, checked in regularly, and wasn't someone who disappeared without explanation. Friends and family describe him as calm, intelligent, and level-headed, someone who didn't make sudden dramatic decisions or cut off communication without reason. If Sam was going somewhere, someone usually knew about it. So, by the summer of 2025, Sam was living a relatively private life, away from the spotlight of professional football, and there was nothing publicly known to suggest he was in any danger. However, everything would suddenly change in a moment that would go on to haunt his family for months, when Sam Beal would mysteriously disappear on that fateful day in July. On Saturday, the 12th of July, Sam began his day like any other. He spent time with his girlfriend and made plans to head to work. Nothing unusual, nothing out of routine. Later that day, Sam borrowed his girlfriend's car after dropping her off at her family's house in Caledonia, Michigan, telling her he was just going to work. It was a simple, ordinary decision, one that gave no indication anything was wrong. But Sam never arrived at his job, as instead of heading to work, he drove more than 800 miles, travelling from Michigan to the Virginia Beach oceanfront, a trip that no one was aware he planned to take. Sometime after arriving in Virginia Beach, Sam made a purchase at a nearby store, buying wine, a lighter, and a to-go cup. A receipt later shared by his sister would confirm he was there and moving about normally. The following day, Sam called his girlfriend at approximately 5:30 p.m. and told her he was in Virginia Beach and on his way back home. There was no urgency in his voice, and once again, there was absolutely no suggestion that anything was wrong. But that phone call would become the last confirmed contact Sam Beal would ever make, as in the following hours, messages and calls began to go unanswered, causing his family to start to worry. Initially, there was little alarm, as after all, Sam was an adult, and brief gaps in communication weren't immediately concerning. But as the silence continued into the next day, those mild fears began to grow. However, just a few days later, the situation would take a disturbing turn when a discovery was made that would change everything. At some point in late July, Sam's family decided to try and track him down to make sure he was okay, using the car's built-in OnStar technology, and shortly after arriving on the scene, they would successfully locate the vehicle, which was in the parking lot of Virginia Beach, right next to the oceanfront. By all accounts, it was parked in a public area, not hidden, not damaged, and not abandoned in a way that immediately suggested a crime had taken place. But what was found inside the car would tell a much more complicated story. Evidence suggested that Sam had been on 25th Street near the oceanfront, as a parking ticket found in the car confirmed his presence there, as well as a store receipt which further indicated that he had visited a local shop that day. However, making matters more suspicious, it was also discovered that Sam's shoes and socks were present in the vehicle, along with sand from the beach which was scattered across the interior. His personal belongings were also inside the car, and there were no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, and no indication that force had been used. But what stood out most was what wasn't there, as Sam himself was nowhere to be found. There were no witnesses who came forward publicly, no confirmed surveillance footage released, and no clear explanation for why Sam would leave his shoes behind or where he went next. So, as the days passed, family members began contacting one another, realizing they were all experiencing the same unsettling silence. Sam still hadn't reached out to anyone, and his phone remained silent, showing no activity, no calls, and no messages. So, it was at this point that concern had truly turned into fear, as with no way to reach their loved one, and with his car being recovered in suspicious conditions, his family came to the realization that something was seriously wrong. And so, after waiting for weeks to hear anything from Sam, his family were eventually forced to make the painful decision to officially report the former NFL player as missing to the Kentwood Police Department in Michigan. On Thursday, the 7th of August, after nearly a month without hearing from Sam Beal, the Kentwood Police Department would receive that harrowing phone call from his family, reporting that their loved one had gone missing and that his whereabouts were unknown. From the moment the report was taken, investigators began working to piece together Sam's final movements. Officers spoke with family members, documenting timelines, habits, and anything that stood out as unusual in the days leading up to his disappearance. One of the earliest priorities was establishing when and where Sam had last been seen. But as officers continued gathering information, it soon became clear that he had not made contact with anyone since the evening of July 13th, and there was no indication that his phone or accounts had been used after that point. So in response, law enforcement quickly began canvassing areas connected to Sam's daily life, focusing on both Michigan and Virginia Beach. They spoke with friends, neighbors, and acquaintances, attempting to reconstruct his movements and uncover anyone who might have seen or interacted with him. Family members shared every detail they had: the car he borrowed from his girlfriend, the last phone call from Virginia Beach, the OnStar data showing the vehicle's location, the parking ticket from 25th Street, and the receipt from the local store. Investigators were also made aware of the shoes, socks, and sand found inside the vehicle, details that added to the urgency of the search. However, despite these efforts, there were still no confirmed sightings of Sam after that final phone call. No messages, no calls, no social media activity. Nothing to suggest he had simply left town or vanished intentionally. But as detectives pieced together his final known movements, they would uncover one detail so alarming that it would immediately shift the focus of the investigation. raising questions that no one in Sam's life had been able to answer. A detail that would make it painfully clear that this was not just an ordinary missing persons case. By late August of 2025, as investigators continued examining the details of Sam Beal's disappearance, they uncovered an extremely concerning piece of evidence that suggested that Sam could be in real danger. However, they were unable to reveal any details to the public out of fear of impacting the investigation. So, in response to this update, law enforcement once again canvassed the area surrounding the oceanfront, this time reaching out to local businesses such as hotels, parking ramps, and even checking hospitals, psych wards, and morgues, anywhere that may have provided a clue as to Sam's whereabouts. Yet despite these exhaustive efforts, no confirmed sightings or evidence of his location was found. Tips began to surface from the community, some vague, some conflicting, and many impossible to verify, but detectives worked tirelessly to separate fact from rumour, documenting every lead while continuing to collect and process any physical evidence they could find. Agencies including the Kentwood Police Department, with support from Virginia Beach Police, coordinated to ensure that no avenue was left unexplored. But as the weeks passed with still no updates, local media coverage began amplifying the case in order to help the family reach a wider audience and encourage potential witnesses to come forward. But even with the public attention, the situation remained grim. It seemed that Sam's disappearance was defying explanation, leaving investigators frustrated and grasping for answers. For Sam's family, the lack of progress was devastating. His sister, Essence Zane, spoke publicly about the toll the case had been taking, describing the constant uncertainty and the anxiety of not knowing where Sam might be or whether he was safe. She explained that the family had done everything they could, even searching Airbnbs and nearby properties, yet each attempt to find out the truth ended without any answers. So, despite their efforts, to this day Sam's family remain in limbo, leaving them to confront the dark reality that their loved one is still missing, and that the questions surrounding his disappearance continue to grow heavier with each passing day. Now, unfortunately, as far as the official investigation goes, this is all we know for now. Despite months of investigative efforts, including coordination between multiple police departments, extensive searches, and continued follow-ups, there are still no definitive answers explaining what happened to Sam Beal after that final phone call on July 13th. So for Sam's family, the lack of closure has been deeply painful, but regardless, they continue to speak out publicly, urging anyone with information to come forward, and they refuse to let his disappearance fade from the public eye. However, as more than 7 months has now passed since Sam was last seen or heard from, and with no confirmed sightings or physical evidence explaining where he went, the questions surrounding his disappearance have only grown more unsettling with time. So with that, let's get into some of the potential theories. Now, as always, just before we get into the theories themselves, I feel it's important to acknowledge the immense pain and uncertainty that Sam's family have been forced to endure during this difficult period. So, out of respect for them, I will do my best to approach these possibilities with as much empathy and sensitivity as possible. Also, while some theories may appear more likely than others, we must remember that until concrete evidence emerges, they remain nothing more than speculation. But with that being said, one of the most widely considered explanations for what happened to Sam Beal is that he was a victim of foul play. From the very beginning, his family has maintained that Sam's disappearance was completely out of character. His sister Essence Zane has spoken publicly about how close their family was, and how unusual it was for Sam to suddenly cut off all contact without explanation. That concern is reinforced by the timeline investigators have been able to confirm. Sam never returned home after his final phone call on July 13th, and there has been no confirmed contact with anyone since that moment. No calls, no messages, and no financial activity. For investigators, that suggests that whatever happened to Sam likely occurred shortly after he was last known to be in Virginia Beach. The discovery of the car only deepens those concerns. The vehicle was found parked near the oceanfront with Sam's shoes and socks left behind, along with sand from the beach. There were no signs of a struggle, but there was also no explanation for why Sam would willingly leave his shoes behind and vanish in a public populated area without being seen. Supporters of the foul play theory point out that Virginia Beach's oceanfront is heavily monitored, making it difficult for someone to simply disappear without crossing paths with another person or being captured by surveillance cameras. So the lack of witnesses, surveillance footage, or any digital trace has led some to believe that someone else may have been involved, and that Sam's disappearance may not have been accidental or voluntary. While law enforcement has stated that there is no confirmed evidence of foul play, the absence of evidence cuts both ways. No body has been found, no crime scene has been identified, and no suspects have been named. So for Sam's family, that lack of answers only strengthens their belief that someone out there may know more than they are saying. The family has repeatedly appealed to the public, urging anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. Their message has remained consistent. Sam did not simply walk away from his life, and the truth cannot come out until someone speaks up. So, while no arrests have been made and no definitive proof of murder has been established, the unexplained circumstances, the abrupt silence, and the location of Sam's disappearance has led many to believe that foul play cannot be ruled out. And so, if this is the case, the unavoidable question becomes, who could have been responsible for what happened to Sam Beal, and why has no one come forward after all this time? Well, another theory that has been discussed both online and among those closely following the case involves the possibility that Sam Beal may have encountered someone with malicious intent, potentially leading to his abduction and possible death. Sam's last confirmed location places him in the Virginia Beach oceanfront area, a busy but transient location where locals, tourists, and strangers regularly cross paths. Evidence suggests that he had been on 25th Street and had visited a nearby store, which is an activity that would have put him in close proximity to people he likely did not know. On the surface, nothing about Sam's movements that day appeared alarming. He was seen making routine purchases and calmly speaking with his girlfriend on the phone. But what stands out is that after that point, Sam vanishes completely. Some have questioned whether Sam may have encountered someone who gained his trust, or at least didn't immediately trigger alarm, before things took a dangerous turn. There were no signs of a struggle in or around the vehicle, which raises the unsettling possibility that if someone else was involved, then Sam may not have realised the danger that he was in until it was too late. This has led to darker speculation, including the idea that Sam could have been targeted for abduction, possibly for ransom, trafficking, or even organ harvesting on the more extreme end of the spectrum. While such scenarios are rare, proponents of this theory point to Sam's physical condition, as he was a former NFL player, as well as the fact that he was alone in an unfamiliar area, as these are factors that could have made him a target. Others go a step further, suggesting that Sam may have crossed paths with individuals involved in organised criminal activity. Not necessarily because he was targeted specifically, but because he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. In such cases, victims may be lured away, restrained without immediate violence, or concealed in a way that leaves little to no evidence behind. However, it is critically important to emphasize that so far, no suspects have been named, no ransom demands were ever made public, and law enforcement has not released any evidence indicating that Sam was abducted, trafficked, or murdered in this manner. There is also no confirmation that anyone else was with Sam at the time he disappeared. So, because of that, this theory remains purely speculative, driven more by unanswered questions than by confirmed facts. However, the complete lack of witnesses, surveillance footage, or physical evidence explaining how Sam disappeared from such a public area continues to trouble many who follow the case. So, while there is no proof that Sam was abducted or harmed by another person, the absence of answers here leaves the door open to some uncomfortable possibilities. But before assuming the worst, there is another explanation that some believe deserves just as much consideration, as after all, what if no one else was involved at all? Well, another theory that must be carefully considered in cases like these is the possibility that Sam Beal's disappearance may have been the result of a tragic accident, potentially influenced by disorientation, emotional distress, or an unexpected medical or mental health crisis. When someone vanishes suddenly and without explanation, investigators are trained to look closely at the circumstances surrounding their final known movement. In Sam's case, his decision to travel alone to the Virginia Beach oceanfront, far from home, without clear plans, and with only the clothes he was wearing, raises questions about his state of mind in those final hours. Some have speculated that Sam may have been experiencing confusion, emotional overwhelm, or a momentary mental health episode that may have led him to wander away from his vehicle on foot. In unfamiliar environments, even brief disorientation can have serious consequences, especially near bodies of water or in areas with limited visibility late at night. That concern is amplified by the setting itself. Virginia Beach is surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, inlets, parking structures, construction zones, as well as poorly lit walkways, all of which present significant risks. The discovery of Sam's shoes and socks left behind, along with the sand found inside the vehicle, has led some to consider whether he may have entered the water either intentionally or unintentionally, resulting in a fatal accident that went unseen. But what complicates all of these possibilities is the complete absence of physical evidence beyond the vehicle itself. In many accidental or water-related deaths, something is eventually found, yet in Sam's case, nothing has surfaced to explain where he went or what happened next. That lack of evidence leaves behind unsettling questions. It could suggest that environmental factors have obscured some crucial clues, or that the location where something occurred has simply never been identified. It also leaves open the painful possibility that answers exist but have yet to come to light. So for Sam's family, this theory is especially difficult to accept. They continue to believe that someone somewhere may know more than they are saying, and that the truth has yet to surface. The idea that someone could disappear so completely from such a populated area only deepens their concern. And while an accidental death influenced by disorientation or environment cannot be ruled out, the strange circumstances surrounding Sam's disappearance continue to raise doubts, because if this truly was an accident, then why has nothing else ever been found? Well, with this question in mind, one final theory that has been discussed in relation to Sam Beal's disappearance is the possibility that he may have chosen to walk away voluntarily, potentially as a way to escape personal or financial pressures. This particular idea has emerged following the discovery of online Michigan records showing that Sam spent 5 months in prison for unpaid child support prior to vanishing 7 months ago. Some have speculated that the stress of legal obligations, combined with the challenges of transitioning out of professional football, could have motivated him to attempt a complete restart, leaving behind his home, his belongings, and even contact with loved ones. In cases like this, voluntary disappearances are sometimes considered when there are minimal physical clues, as there are in Sam's case. However, this theory is complicated by what Sam's family has consistently maintained. They describe him as someone who was responsible, connected, and unlikely to abandon his life and relationships without a word. For them, the silence and lack of any financial or digital activity since his last phone call is entirely uncharacteristic. The circumstances of his disappearance also challenge this theory. Sam left behind almost all of his personal items in the car, which would seem unusual for someone intending to start over. Additionally, his sudden disappearance in a populated area like Virginia Beach, with no plan publicly visible or traceable, raises questions about whether walking away voluntarily is a realistic explanation. If he had decided to leave intentionally, you would expect to see some trace of his movements, like accessing bank accounts, contacting acquaintances, or re-establishing himself in some way. Yet to this day, there have been no confirmed sightings, no digital activity, and no financial transactions, making the voluntary disappearance theory increasingly difficult to reconcile with the known facts. So while it cannot be entirely ruled out that Sam walked away to escape legal or personal pressures, the total lack of evidence combined with the concerns and insights of his family makes this explanation far less likely than the possibility that something or someone prevented him from returning. However, once again, I feel it is important to remind you that until more evidence comes to light, all of these theories remain nothing more than speculation. So for now, all we can do is continue spreading awareness for Sam, and hope that with our help, his family will get the answers that they have been waiting for. Anyway, on that note, I think I'll leave this video here. But as always, if you have any other theories of your own which you think may help explain what really happened to Sam Beal, then please leave your ideas in the comments down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for updates on these stories. Also, if you would like to learn more about these types of cases, please feel free to check out the playlist on screen now, which covers the many other cases of young black men who have mysteriously disappeared under similar circumstances.